Time moved forward, as it always does. Decades passed after Harold Jamison was laid to rest beneath that quiet oak tree, his name carved in simple stone beside Ruth's. The seasons shifted with gentle indifference, and the world continued to evolve. Faster cars, smaller phones, newer wars, but somewhere in the silent corners of memory, in attic boxes, folded flags, yellowed letters, his story lingered. His grandchildren, now raising children of their own, still spoke of him with a certain reverence. Not because he told them tales of glory, but because of all the things he never had to say. They remembered the way he stood when the anthem played, ramrod straight with his hat held tight against his chest. They remembered the sound of his boots on the porch each morning, like the slow rhythm of an old bomber climbing into cold sky. They remembered the look in his eyes when he stared at the horizon, not searching, but remembering. His eldest grandson, David, would later say, "Grandpa didn't need to tell us what war was." You could see it in how carefully he moved through peace. On the anniversary of Harold's final mission, David visited the cemetery alone. He brought a small model of a B-17 painted in the same olive drab, with iron willed etched carefully on the nose. He placed it at the base of the headstone and stood in silence for several minutes. No words, just wind. Elsewhere, the town remembered him too. The local high school, once a dusty building Harold helped maintain in the 1950s, held an annual assembly where students read aloud the names of local veterans. But when they got to Harold Jamison, they didn't just say his name. They told his story. A teacher would read from a worn page. He was a tail gunner aboard a B-17 during the Second World War. He saved his crew by holding off a swarm of enemy fighters with nothing but 2 machine guns and pure willpower. And then he came home and never said a word about it. The room always grew quiet after that. Even the restless kids would sit a little straighter. Some stories stay alive not because they are told often, but because they are carried carefully. One of Harold's crewmates, long retired and living in California, had framed the letter Harold, sent him in 1946. It was just 2 paragraphs. It said, "We made it. I still hear the sky sometimes. I hope you found peace." That letter now hung on the wall of a grandson's study, a daily reminder that peace isn't always what we fight for, but what we try to live through afterward. In a dusty museum 2 states over, a volunteer had unknowingly placed a photograph of iron-willed in a glass case among other bombers. The description was simple: B-17, 8th Air Force, late 1943, likely Leipzig raid. A small group of veterans visited that exhibit one day, and one of them, pushing a walker, paused for a long time in front of it. "I think I knew the tail gunner on that one," he whispered. Quiet kid, but he had steel in him, and so long after Harold had passed, he remained not as a statue or in pages of textbooks, but in the collective breath of those who understood what it meant to survive something without needing to speak it aloud. His home was sold, but the tree he planted still stood tall. His medals were donated to a local VFW, where they rested in a locked case, barely noticed, except by the few who paused long enough to read the nameplate. And in the attic of a young family's home, new owners of Harold's old farmhouse, there remained, tucked behind a rafter, a steel box untouched. Inside, a torn mission map of Leipzig, a cracked piece of plexiglass, a faded crew photo, and a folded note in yellowed ink. "You bought us every second we needed. Subscribe for more Wings of Valor."